Recording. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Janice Nelson, and I am the founder of Birth and Beyond. And the reason I started Birth and Beyond is because my background is in birth and childbirth and breastfeeding, but also I do a lot of work with family and marriage. And so I wanted to do Birth and Beyond to not only talk about physical birth, but also spiritual birth. And on today, I am here joined with two of my lovely sisters to talk about um, being raised by a single mom and how that can impact us and how it has impacted us, things that we learn, challenges that we have overcome. And we're actually hoping that our testimony and our story can be a teleport or encouragement to those who are either a single mom or have been raised by a single mom and maybe can identify with some of the things that we have experienced. So I am not going to hold this much longer. I'm going to take this over to my sisters and allow them to introduce themselves. I have Lysandra Hutchison and I also have Sean Lester. So I'm going to ask Sean to introduce yourself.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Sean, and let's see a little bit about myself. I am married with five children, five sons. Yeah, you can go ahead and congratulate me now for surviving that. I have five sons, ranging in age from 27 to 16. I am currently pursuing a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And so that's going really well. Excited about that. My background for marriage and family has been extensive. For the last 23 years or so, I've been involved in some type of marriage ministry, planning marriage retreats, hosting seminars, teaching on marriage and family. I'm very passionate about family issues. I'm a firm believer that if you fix the family, everything else in society gets fixed. And so that's been my passion. And I am, here for anything that concerns marriage, family, motherhood issues, homeschooling, any of those things. I touch it all pretty much. So thank you for having me, Janice.
Well, thank you for joining us, Sean. And next, I have the lovely Lysandra Hutchison.
Hello, I'm Lysandra, and let's see. I actually was raised primarily by a single mom, so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. She had a lot of support though when we were growing up, so that was good. And I got married to my best friend from high school. In 2004, we have four kids: Noel, Bella, Noah, and Hallie, and they're Hallie's 9, Noelle is 14, so they're in that range. I became a widow in 2017, and so after that, I founded Grace and Grief, which is an initiative that helps people grow through grief and recreate their life after loss. So I'm also a domestic violence advocate. So I work at a nonprofit called South Suburban Family Shelter that's in Illinois, and I do domestic violence advocacy and outreach work with them.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing. I guess I just realized there's some information about me that I did not share, meaning that I am married also.
Oh, yeah.
That would be helpful for people to know.
I am married, been married for 17 years, and I'm also the mother of six. We have three girls and three boys. Gabrielle is 16, Jeremiah is 15, Jasmine is 13, Roman is 12, Rachel is 10, and Nathaniel is 8. But I'm also a certified doula and a certified breastfeeding peer counselor, and I am in the process of finishing my degree in maternal health and human lactation, where my ultimate goal is to open up my own agency and help moms through labor, delivery, and anything concerning birth and family.
Awesome.
So Our next thing is I would like for the young ladies that I am on this panel with to talk about your background. Like give us a brief background of your childhood, and whatever you want to share with that. So I am going to start off again with the beautiful Sean. And
Okay, so my background probably looks like a lot of folks' background with single parenthood. I was raised by my mom. I did not meet my father until I was a freshman in college. Um, my mom had a history of relationships and marriages, but none of them really stick. So we were mostly on our own most of the time. But I would say that I did not have a horrible childhood because of it. I would say that my mom definitely wanted me to excel and exceed in everything that I did. So I was an overachiever, and I carried that probably throughout my life. But I would say that my mom really wanted the best for us, even though her life circumstances weren't the greatest. And she also came from a single mom as well, and had her mom pass away when she was very young. So she didn't really have a mother's guidance or anything, and she was doing the best that she could with me and my sister. And so we basically were three strong Black women in a house trying to make it. And so that's kind of where my roots come from, actually.
okay, wow, learned something new today.
Mhm.
Lysandra.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, my mom was a single mom. My dad and her, they didn't really get a divorce to maybe when I was probably about 10, but they were never in the house together. They were separated all the time. So I never lived in the house with him. My mom had a boyfriend who eventually became my stepdad, and he was like off and on, but he was the primary father figure that we had in the home. And he was great. He was amazing. Even though their relationship was kind of like back and forth. Um, so I had him and other good examples of good, like, responsible father like men, a few, in my life, which was healthy, good. I only had one sibling, which was my brother, and he's a year older than me. So it was just the two of us, which meant I spent a lot of time alone too, kind of growing up. And kind of trying to find my way. My mom didn't have a relationship with her family at all. So by the time that I came around or was born, I hadn't even ever met anybody in her family. So only knew my father's side of the family. Um, and so that was hard. There just kind of left some gaps in um, just information and being able to have people that are like actually biologically related that kind of, I think, left a feeling of a void.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
For me, my parents were actually married when I was born and when my younger brother was born. My mom and my father had two children, and me and my brother are 4 years apart. But my father also has another son, so it's technically three of us. But I didn't learn about him later on down the line, and that's a whole nother story. So, but I was birthed to a two-parent home, but my father ended up leaving. And I want to say, possibly 7, 8 years old when my father left. And I actually remember when my father left. We got up and it was a normal Sunday morning. My parents went to two different churches. And so every Sunday, my father would drop us off at church, and then he would go to his church service. And then eventually he would come back and pick us up, and we would go back home. Well, this particular Sunday, Dad didn't show up. He didn't come back and pick us up. And so my mom ended up having somebody else to drop us off back home. And when we got home, all of my daddy items were gone. Um, Drawers empty, clothes gone, everything is just gone. And so I remember my mom calling around trying to figure out where my daddy is at. And I remember her calling my grandmother, which was my father's mom, and asking questions about my dad. And I remember my mom. It's amazing how things you remember. even at such a young age. I remember my mom being hysterical. I remember her crying. I remember seeing the pain, of not knowing what happened. And then I'm just confused because it's like daddy is gone. So from that point on, I was pretty much raised by my mom. Now, my father was in my life, but we only saw him on the weekends. And we really didn't see him much on the weekends because my father worked a lot on the weekends. So um, I never really, even though my father was in my life, I never had that father-daughter relationship. Me and my father have more of a friend relationship. So that's kind of how that went. But my mom was a very um, strong woman and a very Christian woman. So we were raised in a Christian household. And I was raised around my mom's side of the family once my parents split. So that was kind of like our background of how I went from a two-parent home to end up being pretty much raised by a single mom. So our next question is, what was your relationship like with your mother? I'll go with Sean again.
You probably saw that expression come across my face. Ah, so okay. So the first disclaimer is I really love my mom. But let's just say we have had an interesting relationship. Um, I was the oldest girl, and a lot of responsibility just naturally fell on me because of it. My sister and I are 5 years apart, so she really was too young in the beginning stages of life to really help out. So a lot of the responsibility fell on me, and naturally, I resented it. I resented having to cook and clean and take care of my sister while mom went to work or while she decided she wanted to go out because she wanted to live her life. So we had a rocky relationship growing up, probably until a little after I got married and had children, and I understood some of her issues a little more clearly. But I would say we have a good relationship, but there still is a lot of tension because I think that we've been working through just the whole process of just my early history. Like, why did you not tell me about my father? Why did I not know? All of this thing. So there are a lot of gaps in my life. There's a lot of pain. Still dealing with not having a father, and even after meeting my father, not having him in my life still until this day. And so we're working through a lot of issues, a lot, the more I grow, the more I mature, the more I can see her side of it better, but also just kind of working through, just the pain of the past and working on having healthy conversations about things, working on not blaming her for everything, but having her to be responsible for what she needed to be responsible for. And so that kind of creates a dynamic and some tension sometimes, but we're working through it. And so we're in a good place right now. We don't know what next week will have. As we approach Mother's Day, because that's always, kind of whatever with expectations and things of that nature. But I would say that I have a better understanding and perspective of the decisions that she made. And so I can extend grace to her. But I also, want to help her to understand that because of her decisions, there were implications of her decisions in my life and in the life of my children as well. So we're working through that.
Well, that's a blessing that one, you guys are talking through that. Two, that you guys can have those hard conversations, because that doesn't always work on every end. I tell you about my story after we hear Lissandra's. Uh, but that is good, that you guys are able to have those hard conversations. So, what is your relationship like, Lysandra, with Mama Lucy?
Can you guys hear me okay? Because I switched to my phone. Do you
Yeah.
hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Okay. So um it's interesting because my mom didn't have a great relationship with her mom. And so I really do think that that impacts a woman's ability to mother, how she was mothered, because really I think that we often just give what we've been given. You know, we don't, it's hard to pull out what you really haven't been given, or to even know that it's needed. And so because she didn't have a strong relationship with her mom, she was trying really hard not to make the same mistakes as her mom, which in some ways was good and in some ways backfired, you know, because you go from one extreme to another, you know. And so, you know, and I see myself trying to do the same thing, walk the same lines and not go from one extreme to the other. And so I get that, but I think I think that when I reached kind of like, what are those hard ages, like 11, 12, you know, and then into my teenage years, my relationship with her was like super, like a lot of tension, you know, and I started carrying a lot of resentment around the things that I felt like she wasn't doing well. And I kind of went along with the program, but I think in my heart, I felt like, okay, I'm getting out of here, you know. And it was just kind of like, when I get grown and I'm do my own thing, when I finally got away, and it was like, and it wasn't that she wasn't supportive. My mom was super supportive. I appreciate that about her. But yeah, I just wanted to live my own life. You know, that was how I felt. I want to live my own life, do what I want to do. When I finally got to college, I really missed her. And I really kind of had an awakening of sorts about how hard she actually had tried. And then, of course, when I became a mom, even more so, you know, understanding how her not having had a strong relationship with her own mom, she really had went above and beyond, um, even though it wasn't perfect, but it was above and beyond, all things considered, you know, where she had come from and what she had to work with. So I think that I really honor her, really appreciate her. We have a good like friendship, but I do think that there still remains some of those mother-daughter gaps that it's hard to replace, because it's like, what's the word? I think that there's just like some level of distance maybe in some ways that, you know, just exists as a result of like her upbringing and then my upbringing. And some of that, just in short, is she left home at 13, I left home at 17. She never went home, I never went home. So when you leave home, I know, Sean, you understand, you know, when you leave home so young and you become an adult so young, I do think that some of that nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it gets
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. It's funny because kind of all of our stories is the same. That we got to a point where we began to look back on our moms and things that they lacked because they didn't receive it from their moms, and have
Mm-hmm.
to be able to understand things about them and their behavior and why they did some things and why they didn't do some things. It's kind of funny because there are a lot of people who know me and my mom always thought me and my mom was close. And when that ever comes out that they think me and my mom's close, and I was like, I don't know why y'all think that, because we're not. Like, you know, so it's like, as Sean said, I love my mom to pieces. My mom has been my rock in a lot of ways, you know, but our relationship at a young age was rocky because I was trying to be a daddy's girl. So me trying to be a daddy's girl, raised, it didn't fit so well with my mom. So that caused some form of conflict, in between with us, and there was a lot of things, and my mom was, in some ways, um, her verbiage to me felt like verbal abuse, and things that she would say to me and how she would talk to me and how she would put me down and things of that nature. And so I did my best to not be around my mom. I stayed busy with extracurricular activities, with church things and things of that nature, so that I wouldn't be home. I also felt growing up that my mom favored my brother over me. And so I felt like there was things that my brother could get away with that if I thought about doing, I was going to get, rebuked for it. So those are just different factors that I felt like hindered our relationship at a young age. My mom was not necessarily a nurturer in that aspect where she said she loved you or hugged you or kissed you and things of that nature. But when I got older, looking back, I noticed the ways that my mom celebrated me. My mom was at every award ceremony. My mom was on every field trip. My mom went to every extracurricular activity that I was there that she possibly could be there to support me. My birthdays, whatever I wanted, if I named it, she tried in her power to make sure that it happened for birthday, for Christmas, things of that nature. And my mom, for being a single mom, was a stay-at-home mom. So for her to be a stay-at-home mom and a single mom and able to make these things happen for us, that was her way of showing that she loved us. And it took me, as you said, to become an adult to really realize that these were my mom's ways of showing that she loved me. And then when I began to dissect some things that I knew about my grandmother, I began to realize, oh, these are areas that she lacked only because she didn't experience it in her upbringing. So she couldn't give it to me because she didn't know how. And it did, and she gave it to me in the way that she knew how to do it. So even now, me and my mom, we're cool. We're cool, things of that nature and stuff. But there's one thing that I feel like, Sean, that you and your mom are able to do that me and my mom are not able to do, is to have those hard talks. I can't bring up, it was like I had to learn to forgive my mom without getting closure, because I knew I couldn't have those hard conversations with her. So it was like accepting the fact that I couldn't really be up in front with her to tell her how certain things that she did affected me. I just have to acknowledge that it affected me, deal with how it affected me, heal from it, learn to forgive her for it, and be okay with the bond that we have. So, okay. So our next question is, in what ways being raised by a single mom affected you? I don't know if that's any answers is different than what we've already said, but you have anything you want to point out that you feel like affected you with raised by a single mom?
Yeah, I looking back as I got older, I realized that I was jealous of people who had their father around. I remember if I just had a jealousy in my heart around that. I think that if I saw girls who were super, super treated with a lot of gentleness and kindness and attention from their dad, I felt like, that was how I felt when I was like that. But that was jealousy, and I think that I didn't know that's how I felt, but I do think that, just sometimes I think that, just those voids, even though your mom could be a superwoman, you still want the parent that's not there. You still want the parent that's not there.
No matter how crazy they are, right?
No matter how crazy they are. You sure do wish he was here,
Right.
or a better version of them. You know, you wish that you had a better version of them. And so that was one like huge impact. My mom, though, like you said, Janice, she was at everything. Like, she came to every performance and was very, very supportive of like all these activities, and very much an encourager. And I had friends whose moms weren't able to make stuff or like come to the games when we were cheerleaders, or, you know, make it to the performances. And so I would acknowledge my mom. Like, I knew like the fact that you come to all this stuff is, you know, significant, you know, and I appreciate it. So, yeah, I think that we had a lot of, there were strengths and then there were like weaknesses. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm probably gonna like put a consensus on that. That yeah, my mom made everything. She still makes everything, even now. Like if my kids have stuff, she's there. I'm like, okay, if nobody's gonna be there, my mom is gonna be there,
Yeah.
and she's gonna be loud. And so I, I deal with that. But I think growing up, having a single mom, I made a lot of mental checklists of things that I wanted my life to look differently. And I think that I think very early on it birthed in me just this desire for a strong family unit. um, it made me want to study and learn how that dynamic works. It made me want to do my best to choose a mate that was going to have those same values that I had around family. And it made me want to be the kind of wife and mother that will support a strong, healthy family. So I think I took a lot of those negatives and tried to turn them into positives in my life and say, okay, well, I want a different outcome. And if I'm going to have a different outcome, I'm going to have to do something differently than what has been done. And so I think that in and of itself is something that I can take from my mom and say, okay, yeah, you didn't have it all perfectly, but look at what it produced in me and in my family in the generations to come. So I think I did a lot of mental checklists of what, you know, what I really wanted my life to look like. But I think the other impact that having a single mom had on my life was just understanding that um, motherhood is this dynamic type of relationship. It's not static. It's always moving. It's always changing. And I saw that develop in my relationship with my mom. How I was as a young child, how I was as a teenager, and how I am as an adult. So I took that and I looked at my children as they were growing up, and I said, okay, no, 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 they're not going to be babies all the time. Our relationship is constantly going to be changing, just like it did with my mom's relationship. And so it allowed me the flexibility to allow them to grow and develop in their own ways without trying to cookie cutter my children. And so that was the implication of just watching our relationship and how it evolved over time, and taking that into my motherhood and saying, okay, this is what I got from her, even though she was a single mom, and even though she was trying to play the role of mom and dad, and it wasn't, you know, successful. Giving me permission to not have to do that, and say, okay, relationships are dynamic, and it's okay if it evolves. That's what I think I got from her raising me as a single mom.
That's good. That's real good, and it's true. Our relationships have evolved and developed and changed, you know. And even though you didn't skip to one of my other questions, but that's all right, Sean. Want to
Sorry.
hit. But you know, just the one of different dynamics of how, you know, what ways we have defined motherhood for ourselves. And I feel like you touched on that. And I think one of the things is, you know, for me also was taking what I felt like I missed growing up and trying that I felt like was important. So one of the things I felt like my mom, one of her strengths was not verbally expressing her affections. towards me. And so I wanted to make sure that my children heard me say, I love you. I am proud of you. You know, you're beautiful, you're handsome, things of that nature. So I made sure that these are things that I've said to them. I wanted to make sure that, you know, they get a hug from mom or a kiss from mom, you know, up until whatever age that they didn't like it no more. Unfortunately, my kids still like it. So I don't embarrass them with it. At least they don't act like I do. You know, so just taking those things and redefining it. But when I even look back, it's not much that I can say from being raised by my mom that I will want to eliminate and not carry over even in my motherhood. You know, even though I felt like there were some things that she lacked or things that I missed out on or experiences or whatever the case may be. But as you said, we I was raised by strong women, you know, who did their best in playing both roles. I think one thing that affected me the most about being raised by a single mom, and I didn't notice it until I got married, was my independentness. I was raised by a woman who we did everything. If the lawn need to be mowed, we mowed it. If the snow need to be shoveled, we shoveled it. If a light fixture needed to be fixed, we fixed it. You know, so if a couch needed to be moved, we moved it. So it was like I had this independent, I can do it on my own mentality that, you know, didn't work so well when I got married. So that was something
True.
I had to adjust after I got married, you know. So yeah, that's really good. I'm trying to move on. I feel like we're hitting on some of the stuff, so I'm not going to repeat some of the things. But was there anything, Lysandra, that you had that you wanted to add to that particular question, or?
And it was is the can you repeat the question again?
What ways being raised by a single mom affected you?
Okay. Yeah, I think I answered that.
Okay, so we can move on. So what are some of the strengths do you say that your mom had that you identify with, or some of the strengths that you feel like she had that you either noticed you took on or you purposely took on?
My mom, you know my mom, you guys know my mom. My mom has a way with people. And she had to have a way with people because she was on her own so young. And so when we were growing up at school, there was like no one that did not know Miss Lucy. You know, I didn't go anywhere and someone not say, how's your mom? Where's your mom? Tell your mom we said hello, because she's charismatic, she's friendly, she's down to earth, she can build a quick rapport. And so I saw that as like a asset of hers, and I feel like I adopted that too. Maybe not quite as well as she. Maybe not quite as well, but I mean, I have that quality, I think, and so I tend to be able to shift and be among anyone, you know, and kind of develop a quick rapport. It's all I've ever seen was, you know, watching her behave in that way. And so I think that's a strength that I took on. And I think she had to be that way, to be resilient, to get things done and get what she needed done. And I mean, we could go somewhere and they say, the line is closed. And she'd be like, oh, no, it's not. You know, she'd walk up and, you know, who runs the line? And by the time she was done, she's like, come on, we're going in, you know. Like, who did you talk to? What's happening, you know? So she's that type of person. So I think that it's good. It helps me now, even in a widowhood journey as a widow. It's like I pull from that. Like, look, we got to get stuff done. Let's go. I know how to get it done. Or I know if this person's not going to listen to me, who else is over here? Let me talk to the manager, or, you know, whatever I have to do. Also, she, just along with that, she was just resilient. She had a lot of faith. Like, she just believed. She had a lot of faith that like anything was possible. And, you know, she just never gave up her hope or her faith in things. And I feel like that is a quality that I've taken on too. Just like, I'm just going to trust God and don't know how it's going to work out, but I believe it'll work out. She was a really firm believer in like things happen for a reason. You know, that was the kind of rhetoric that she used. And so that was really embedded in me. Yeah, and I feel like that was from her having her journey, you know, on her own and then being a single mom.
Okay. What about you, Sean?
So I think the first thing that comes to mind as a strength that I got from my mom was her love of people, and the hospitality that's in me was birthed through her. My mom knows and knew how to throw a party.
Yes.
So we were surrounded by opportunities to be hospitable, to open our home to people, to serve people. My mom always did that. I can remember growing up having even various relatives like live with us for, like transient relatives, like coming to stay with us for this time or that time, because she would never close her door to anybody. She would always feed anybody, like, and I get that from her, and I am so grateful for that. I think another strength that I get from my mom is just her ability to see things going on around her, go into her quiet space, and then come out like a lion. Like, okay, this happened. What are we gonna do about it? And so I think that I get that from her. It's that tenacity, that fighting spirit, that spirit that says we're not gonna die, we're not gonna quit, we won't give up. We gonna do this. And so I think I got that from her. I probably got a little bit more though than
You got a double
the
portion.
recommended dosage of fighting spirit. But it has served me.
Yeah.
That's good. My mom. My mom is the only woman that I know that can make something out of completely nothing. It's like, as I said before, growing up, my mom was a single mom. To my knowledge, my mom wasn't getting like any child support. And my mom didn't have a 9 to 5 job. Okay. But we went to every national. Every national. And for those who don't know what a national is a big church convention, and usually it's at another state. We went to every national. We stayed for a week. We didn't go hungry. We flew airplanes. We got on a Greyhound. We got in somebody's automobile. We ate. My mom was when I mean we ate, my mom would have bacon, eggs, biscuits that she cooked in the hotel room. Cause my mom prepared stuff. She was one who had everything down to the T, what we needed. You know, I think back on it now, like I had one of the most. I had a very good childhood. I did, because my mom knew how to make things happen. How did she? She still to this day. My husband and I joke about it now. Well, your mom, my mama's on her way to Oklahoma somewhere. How did she get? I don't know. How she's the most working and traveling woman that I know. How she makes it happen? Only God knows. So, but preparation is what I got from my mom. Always being prepared. So when my kids were younger, I always had snacks. I always had activities for them. I always had change of clothes. You know, anything that I could think of that little kids need to keep them entertained and to keep my sanity, I had, because I got that from my mom. Being on time, I get that from my mom. You tell my mom you come to pick her up at 8 o'clock, at 7:50, we are at the door waiting for the ride. You know, you tell my mom that you need her to be there at 9:50, at 8:30, she is there. So that is something else I get from my mom. Preparation, being on time, learning how to make things happen with little to nothing. My kids hear a lot of times, well, Mom, what you cooking? It's a concoction. A concoction means that I done pulled everything from my cabinet and my refrigerator, and I done put it together, and I done came out with a gourmet meal. What we naming it? It's a concoction because there is no name for it. So how to pull resources, how not to be ashamed to ask people for help and assistance, something else. My mom never was a beggar, but at the same time, she was never ashamed to say, hey, I have this going on, or I would like to do this, what ways can we work together and make this happen? So I feel like those are the lessons that I learned from my mom, but I ain't learned how to travel with no job yet. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, she needs to let me know too.
Yeah, she needs to let us all know.
Secret yet. Okay, what fears? I think this will be our last question because I think we need to wrap it up. But what fears do you feel like you had to overcome?
I think that for me, my mom, because how do we say this? I spent a lot of time alone. I said at that point. And I think that that's because I had one sibling. And then I think my mom, she was either trying to figure out things, make things happen, or maybe spending time alone herself, trying to process life or, just get whatever done. And so it is hard for me because I always been, what is the word? Like, I'm an introvert. And so even when I was married and even since my husband's passed away, I just get a lot out of spending time alone. And I like to be alone. And we weren't eating dinner around the table, right? Because we're like a single mom, 2 kids, we're eating dinner in front of TV and kind of doing our own thing, like come home and everyone does their own thing. But I didn't want to raise my kids that way. So I have raised them we eat dinner at the table and we talk and we check in and we say, what's your high? What's your low? And so I think one of my fears is my struggle to kind of keep up that much engagement with them. Like I want to engage with them, but it's hard for me. Like even if I'm like engaging with them in that way, a lot of times I really want to step away from them and kind of do my own thing. And so I think one of my fears is that. And then also just not being the extremist. Cause so my mom was in a real strict home, had us, we're free to do what we want to do. It's just like one extreme to the next, she was disciplined all the time and overly disciplined and just so then when she had us, she didn't want to discipline us, so then she would let us basically get away with stuff until she just couldn't take it anymore and then explode, and blow up and cause a scene. So trying not to repeat the fears of like, how can I not also repeat these same behaviors, knowing that it's in me to act this way, so like I have to catch myself and say, don't let them get away with all these small things. All it's going to do is add up and then you're going to be ready to explode. So nip it in the bud when they do it while you're calm and in control and, in a place where you can be, sober about it. And, so it's just I think it's a constant like self-awareness. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those are definitely like concerns I have, that I'm constantly trying to be aware of.
Yeah. I think my fears initially revolved around parenting boys, because it was
girls,
my mom and me and my sister, and so we didn't have that dynamic, that male dynamic in our family. And so initially I'm like, okay, I don't want to be too soft on them. I don't want to baby them, and they can probably tell you that I haven't. I haven't, but that was one of my initial fears. I think right now what I'm fearing, as even I'm kind of moving into a new phase of my own life and my career and everything, just making sure that I don't put unfair expectations and burdens on my children for relationship as we age. One of the things that I see in my mom now, because she is still single, she puts a lot of energy into our relationship with me and my sister. Well, we're still actively raising children, and we're in that space of time still now, and we have to help her to understand that, mom, we are not as free as you are.
Right.
And so it's not that we don't want to connect or have this relationship with you, but we are kind of actively raising children. But she doesn't see it that way. And so her expectation is, she wants us to call her all the time and, do all of this stuff. And I'm like, Ma, I just don't have time. And so, but I'm thinking about that as my children are getting older, and making sure that I understand, okay, when they are in their space of raising children and with their family, not having the expectation, not being a helicopter mom, and wanting to have them, connecting with me all the time and doing all this stuff together, giving them the space to live their own lives. So that was my fear of saying, okay, no, I don't want that to be what our future looks like. So
Yeah. I think kind of on the same notes with you two ladies is one of mine was with, I didn't want to, one of my fears was to not repeat, how can I say this? I didn't want to repeat how I was raised, meaning that I I I didn't want to constantly live on the west side of Chicago. I didn't want to constantly have my children around drug dealers and things of that nature. So it was the fear of not going beyond how I was raised, if that makes sense. So I that's why I achieved, tried to go high and achieve high, because I wanted to get out of that atmosphere. I wanted to get out of the west side of Chicago, being raised on a basement apartment. I didn't want that to be my story. So I feel like that's why I tried to work so hard that wasn't my narrative or my children's narrative. Um, and then going forth, being a helicopter mom is one of them, but also I want a healthy relationship with my children. So it's like my fear is I don't want to be a helicopter mom, but at the same time, I don't want my children to be so distant from me that we don't have any relationship at all. I want that healthy relationship. I want that, um, we get together, at least once a year, where we all attempt to get together, because I have to be honest, I have 6 children, only God knows what direction that they're going to go into and what part of the world that they're going to actually, live their adult lives. So I want to have healthy relationships with them. And I want to my goal has always tried to be a communication. I think that was another one of my fear. Growing up, my mom would always say, you can talk to me, but I never felt like I really could talk to her, because I felt like there were consequences behind talking to her. And so my thing was with my kids is that I didn't want them to feel that way. I wanted them not to only hear that you can talk to me, but know that you can actually talk to me and understand that, that it gave them different ways to say, hey, I need to vent. So now I know I really need to take mommy hat off and put more of just a listening ear on and not critique what they're saying, but really just hear them out, because they just needed someone to talk to or have a safe place to express themselves and things of that nature, but yet still be respectful. So it was that trying to learn how to allow my children to be open and not feel disrespected, and to teach them to respectfully be open. So that was one of my biggest things that I wanted to overcome, because I really wanted to have a relationship in that dynamic with my children. So I want to say, ladies, I really thank you guys for this. This was really a great conversation. I learned a lot from our stories. I learned that we have a lot of similarities. and things that we had to work through and overcome. And I learned some new things about you ladies. So, Sean, do you have any particular platform that you want to share or give out information that people can reach you about your counseling and things of that nature that you offer?
Okay, so yeah, everybody can find me. I am on most social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as LaShondra Lester. I do have a budding YouTube channel that I have been neglecting. Master's degree, we put that on pause. That's a whole nother conversation. But I have a YouTube platform as well. And they can reach me by email at ladymamagirl@gmail.com.
Okay. And Lysandra?
Mm-hmm. So you guys can find me on Instagram and Facebook is at Grace and Grief. And so that's the Grace and Grief again, helps people learn how to grow through grief and to live a bold life after loss. And you can email me. It's info@graceandgrief.com.
Okay. And currently, right now, my platform is YouTube channel, which is Birth and Beyond. And you also can email me at Janice Nelson, which is JANIECE Nelson, NELSON, the number 8 @gmail.com. If you have any questions or concerns or have any suggestions on other future topics that you would like for us to talk about, I would like to take this moment to say thank you for watching this video, and thank you again to my sisters for joining me on this platform. I hope that this was a great informational forum for you, and I hope you gained something and learned something from this panel. Until next time, have a good evening.